I was standing by the window on a cold and cloudy day when I saw that hearse come rolling, gonna take my mom away. Will the circle be unbroken by and by, Lord, by and by? There's a better home awaiting in the sky, Lord, in the sky. So I followed close behind her. I tried to hold back and be brave, but I could not hold my crying when they laid her in her grave. Will the circle be unbroken by and by, Lord, by and by? There's a better home awaiting in the sky, Lord, in the sky. Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. See that young girl dressed in red, wade in the water. Must be the children that Moses led. God's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. See that young boy dressed in white, wade in the water, children. Must be the children of the Israelite. God's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. See that children dressed in blue, wade in the water. It's all God's children coming through. God's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. You don't believe I've been redeemed? Wade in the water. Just watch the whole lake come looking for me. God's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Gonna trouble the water. Gonna trouble the water. God's gonna trouble the water.
Thank you, Darwin, so much. Can I just be honest with you and say sometimes I can't believe that I get to, almost every week, get to be with musicians of the caliber of Darwin Knort. He's been with us, I guess, at the Village for 13 plus years, and he carries a big load in this place. And he's a professional musician in every way, and I love hearing him sing as much as anybody in the world. And so I hope you were blessed. That knocked me out. I loved it. You're going to like the other song that Darwin's going to sing in just a couple of minutes. Well, I hope your week is going well. I hope that things are working good for you. I hope that you're kind of finding your rhythm. And if you are able to get back into some of the activities that you have previously been missing, I hope that you're doing it in a safe way. And I'm glad that you tune in and are a part of our Village family and our Everybody Church family. I wanted to read this before I talk to you just a moment about the offering. This came from Lori Larvick's page. Lori is a dear friend of ours, and she lives in Seattle, Washington. And she posted this, but I think it is so profound. So I just wanted to read this before I say just a word about the offerings. Blessed are the mask wearers. Are you still wearing your mask, by the way? Anytime I go to a grocery store, anytime I go to a farmer's market, anytime I go and I'm around people outside of a teeny tiny little bubble, that I always make sure that I wear my mask. So I hope you are. Blessed are the mask wearers, for they help keep persons of sacred worth from dying alone and scared, separated from family and friends. Blessed are those who care for the sick and comfort the dying, for they are the presence of the beloved community. Blessed are those who mourn the dead rather than minimize their death, for they will retain their humanity. Blessed are the scientists searching for treatments and vaccines, for they are bearers of hope. Blessed are the food providers for those who can and cannot pay, for they are sustainers of life. Blessed are those who keep their distance, for they allow our beloved ones to remain close. Blessed are those who refuse to profit unjustly from the pandemic, for they bear witness to justice and common decency. Blessed are employers who keep workers safe, for they value life over profit. Blessed are leaders who make compassionate decisions based upon knowledge and evidence, for they forge a wise path. Blessed are the truth tellers, for they provide the best information possible to keep all of us safe. And blessed are those who do not use the pandemic to divide us, for they work for the common good of all. Lori, I don't know where you got that, but thank you for sharing that, because I thought that was very wonderful, and I hope you did too. People ask, how long will it be before the Village begins having services together again in the same shared space? And still, we are so unsure of that. We are trying to listen to the scientists. We're trying to follow the CDC. We're trying to see when it makes sense. And in all probability, it will be when we don't need to wear masks anymore, because if we're having to sit 6, 8, 10 feet apart and wear masks, it seems like we'd probably be better just to stay online. So thanks for being patient with us. Just know all we are trying to do is to make it safe. When we do get together, make it safe for our most vulnerable people. And so thanks for your understanding. Well, now's the time in our service each week when we just say, if you can and you'd like to help, then this is the way you can make that possible. I was talking to a lady the other day in our church who described to me the difficulties financially she has had and her family has had through this pandemic. And she had not told me that before. I said, you've got to tell me these things, because there might be ways that we can help. If you are financially strapped because your business has gone away or your hours have been greatly reduced, whatever it is, then please don't feel any guilt about not helping the Village Church right now. Your presence here means the world to us. You thinking about us and praying for us and just being a part of our community, all of those things means the world to us. Don't stress, don't sweat it. But then for others who you've made your check, you're getting the government subsidy that's helping make ends meet, you're kind of rocking along. We appreciate so much your help. And each week people are helping, and it has been a blessing to us. And so I just want to say thank you. There's 3 ways to give. You know it. It's you can text GIVE to 404-998-8979, 404-998-8979, or you can go to thevillageatlanta.com/give, and there you'll see all the information that will help you make your contribution. Or if you want to send a check, every week, a handful of checks come into the mail here, and that's wonderful. You can send a check to the Village Church, 3418 Dogwood Drive in Hateville, Georgia, 30354. 3418 Dogwood Drive, Hapeville, Georgia, 30354. And again, it is greatly appreciated. All the help you can give us, it's making a difference. And quite frankly, we have not been as stressed as we were even before the pandemic, because many of you have stepped up, and I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. Can I pray for everybody that's watching right now? God, thank you for this day. Thank you for every person who is watching right now, and whatever is on their heart, whatever is heavy that's on their mind, I pray in these next moments they'll get clarity, and they'll have hope, and they will believe good things about you, a good God, and it will help them in their life. We pray this in Christ's name. Amen.
I hear the drizzle of the rain, like a memory it falls, soft and warm continually, tapping on my roof and walls. My mind's distracted and confused. My thoughts are many miles away. They lie with you when you're asleep, kiss you when you start your day. And as I watch the drops of rain weave their weary pens and I know that I am much like rain, there before the grace of you go I. I hear the drizzle of the rain, like a memory it falls, soft and warm continually, tapping on my roof and walls.
Thank you, Darwin Knort. I think I recognize that song. It sounds like a Simon and Garfunkel song. And I love that I'm a part of a church that can sing a Simon and Garfunkel song. And I'm also very, very proud, Darwin, that I get to be on this journey with you. It's been a wonderful, wonderful trip these last 13 years getting to know you. Thank you for singing for us today. I want to talk to you about good stories. Don't you love them? I know I do. That's my favorite part of reading the Bible, when you can latch on to a great story. Maybe it's a birth to grave kind of a story. Jacob is an example in the Old Testament. You start out with Jacob, and he's a twin, and he's kind of a deceiver in a lot of ways, and you think this guy's not going to turn out very well, but then he ends up doing some wrestling, spiritual wrestling with God, and lo and behold, his life ends up being a beautiful life. He's mentioned as one of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and it's his story that you just kind of get captured by. I think of Joseph. Joseph's one of Jacob's sons. Joseph's story is a captivating story. He had some bad things happen to him, but he overcame them. And he stayed true to his devotion to God, and his life ended up being an incredible success, and he ended up saving his family. And you read that story and you think, that's kind of awesome. David, the life of David. I love that story. I can't tell you how many times I've read it. And I love seeing people underestimate him when he starts out as just a shepherd boy. Nobody even thinks he has anything in him that's significant. But then you follow his story and you discover, no, he's special. He really is special. And then he makes some tragic decisions and has some moral failure. And you say, oh man, I hate that. But you see him trying to pull out. And anyway, it's just an interesting thing to follow people's stories. Neil, I get to work with Neil, not only with the Village Church, but at Everybody Church. Plus, we're neighbors. Plus, he's one of my best friends in the world. Neil's story is an interesting story. His whole life is an interesting story. But many people didn't know that Neil was adopted by his grandparents. And then I was just reading a little biographical thing that he had written a few weeks ago, and he talked about his mother kidnapping him when he was 6 years old, how much fun he had spending that day with her and all the cool things they did, and how the police finally came and he was put in an overnight foster care. And it was just interesting because it's like, wow, that's a unique thing about Neil. By the way, there's a lot of unique things about Neil, but that is one thing that's unique about Neil. And it made me really appreciate him because I guess I just love hearing people's stories. That's been one of the things, by the way, that we've enjoyed through this lockdown is Jane and I are watching a little bit more Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime, and we love when we stumble upon good stories. If you haven't watched Unorthodox, by the way, on Netflix, I would give it 2 thumbs up. It's about a Hasidic Jewish young girl who tries to escape from her Hasidic Jewish situation. And it is a captivating story. I love a good story. And you know what? When I get to meet people, I love hearing their stories. And some people say, Ray, my story's not really a big deal. No, as I hear your story, I hear all kinds of things that are very, very interesting. Everybody has a cool story. Some people have stories where they wrestle with their identity and they don't really know who they are for a long, long time, but they finally are able to say, this is who I am. And they step out of the closet, whatever that closet is, and they're able to say, this is me. And they show great courage in doing that. And I say, man, what a story. Some people have stories of heartbreak, and when I hear it, I think I've never experienced anything as devastating as that. But when I hear those stories and I hear how they walked through their sadness, I just think, wow, I'm just in awe. Some people have stories of evolving spiritually. You know, they say, this is the way I saw things for so many years, maybe decades. I saw things in a very fixed way. But then over this last period of time, things have evolved for me. I see it now broader. I see it now bigger. I see it now with more grace. And I love hearing those stories. Several years ago, I'm thinking maybe 15 years ago, Donald Miller, who wrote Blue Like Jazz. It was one of the first progressive-leaning books I think I had ever read. But Donald Miller used to talk about how we needed to see our lives like a story. And he talked about what were the ingredients in a great story. And I remember listening to that way back when and thinking, that's helpful. That's helpful to me. I want to start understanding my life as a beautiful story. And I want to know that when I get in certain circumstances, certain situations, choices I make are going to alter the story. And I want to kind of understand this great story that I get to be a part of, my life, and the great story that you get to be a part of, which is your life. So here's what I want to do. I want to spend just a few minutes talking to you about your story. Is that fair? Now, I don't know if you're listening in your car. I don't know if you're in your pajamas listening on Sunday morning. I don't know if it's late at night, and maybe you are so discouraged and you're so despondent and you've turned this on for some crazy reason. I don't know what your situation is, but I want to talk to you about your story. And I want to give you just a few things, 4 things actually, that are helpful to me that I think might be helpful to you. Fair enough? All right, let's dive in. First thing I want to say is this. Wherever you are in your life right now, your story isn't over. Believe it or not, you may be 65 years old and you've retired from your job and you're kind of kicked back and you think, yeah, my story's done. It's not. For most people hearing my voice, your story isn't over. I did something this past week that I thought was very interesting. A lady who had been in our church for a long time has Alzheimer's, and she's now living with her daughter, and her daughter had me come to their house, and it was not a last rites kind of a thing, but it was basically just spending time talking to this lady, not sure if she even could understand what I was saying, but I was talking to her about her life, and I was talking to her about her future and life beyond this life, and then I said a prayer, and she seemed to kind of, it seemed as if she understood what I was saying. And I left and I thought, yeah, it was a good thing. I was glad I was able to do that. And so for her, she really is at the end. I mean, she really is. It may be months, but she is at the end. She doesn't get out of her bed. It's kind of over for her. But for most of us, it's not over. I know some are wanting it to be over, and I get that. And believe it or not, there have been times where I have thought exactly that thing. I just wish this were over. I wish I could just get out of here. I get it. I get it. Most of us, it's not time yet. We still have some living to do. So I want you to think about how your life perhaps can all be altered just a little to get you on a track that will be a better track, more life, more love in you than maybe you're experiencing right now. Cool story in the Old Testament. It's in Ezekiel chapter 37. God takes the prophet Ezekiel to a field, and the field is filled with dry bones. And God asked Ezekiel, do you think these dry bones could ever live again? And Ezekiel's response was great. He said the best thing he could say, God, you alone know the answer. I don't know. Now, here's what was going on. And again, a lot of the stories in the Bible are metaphors. You have to look deep beneath the surface to understand fully what's taking place. But here's what was taking place for the Jews. A national tragedy had happened to them. They had been conquered by the Babylonian Empire, and they had actually been taken away in captivity into Babylon. So the picture here is of a nation that is in captivity, and they think that it's over for them. It's dead for them. It's nothing but death. It is a horrible, horrible situation. The nation was virtually dead. It was lifeless. It felt scattered. It felt bleached. It felt like a conquered group of people, like that field of bones. That's what it felt like. There was no way humanly possible that the Jews would ever be able to rise up again. Never, never, never. But God says to Ezekiel, preach to the bones in the field. Preach to the bones in the field. Tell those bones, though they think they are dead and can't be revived, I will make breath enter them. Now, what is God wanting to communicate? I think He's wanting to communicate to people who feel as if they are at the end of their road and they don't see any potential for any good life, that it's not over. You may feel like you're dead men's bones, but it doesn't have to be over. The story doesn't have to be over yet. Ezekiel 37:14, God says, I'll put my spirit in you and you will live. You will live. He's wanting the Jewish people to know in captivity, I can put spirit in you and you can feel alive again. So, my word to you today is, first off, regardless of your situation, your story doesn't have to be over. It might look bad, but it doesn't have to be over. I remember way back, 1987, I went through a divorce, and I was in a church setting where if I were divorced, basically my life was over. I would never be allowed to be a pastor again. I would never be allowed to be in leadership again. A divorce was the unpardonable sin almost. And I remember for years thinking my life was over. When I had 2 little boys and I was trying to be a good dad to them, but I just thought this is it. I'm just basically living out the death sentence, and each day is drudgery, and one day I'll die, and that'll be the best thing that could ever happen to me. But I found out that God doesn't throw away people when they feel like they're broken at the end of their life. No, there's always a chance for more life, for something better, for a new day. And that's what began to happen to me. The great Methodist preacher Charles Allen said this: when you say a situation or a person is hopeless, you're slamming the door in the face of God. Don't do that. Who knows what might be just beyond the door? There are no hopeless situations. There are only people who have grown hopeless about those situations, but your story doesn't have to be over. And I have seen, as have you, some amazing turnarounds where life actually takes a little plot twist, something incredible happens, and people who thought they were at a dead end saw their life actually turn out really good. That's the first thing I want to say. Second thing I want to say is this: your story will continue to have pain, and it will continue to have surprising plot twists. That's just life. And you need to understand that. The idea that you will somehow escape ever experiencing pain is never true. We will experience painful parts of life as long as we're breathing. That's just the way it works. Proverbs says this: do not boast about tomorrow, because you don't know what a day may bring forth. And that's very, very true. You don't know. And while today maybe has just been a wonderful, peaceful day for you, you never know what tomorrow may bring. You never know when that phone call brings devastating news. You just don't know. It is a part of life. We experience good and we experience bad. Some people teach if you follow Jesus, then all of life is good and you can avoid pain. And I just want to let you know that's a fantasy. That's never been true, and it won't be true for you. Jesus said you will have hardships and you will have difficulties, but you need to remember, Jesus said, I, Jesus, have overcome the world. You are going to be okay. You're going to be able to get through this. And by the way, without these plot twists and without these painful moments, your life, if it were all great, it would be kind of boring to watch, don't you think? I mean, think about this. If I told you this is my story, I chose to follow God when I was 13 years old, and pretty much everything has gone perfectly for me ever since, the end. Well, how many of you would like to be my friend? Because that's not your story. And so you'd say he is either full of it, number one, or number two, if he's lived that kind of life, I can't even relate to it, and I don't even want to be around somebody like that, right? Have you ever listened to somebody tell their story and it's just a string of success after success after success? They say my home life growing up was idyllic. I finished high school first in my class, and then a lot of colleges wanted me, but I decided to go to the Ivy League. And then when I finished with the very top of my Ivy League class, I took a gap year and I traveled all over Europe and I experienced all of the wonders of what Europe is all about. Then I returned home and I met my wife. She was the most perfect woman I had ever met. We got married. We built our dream house. We have these children that pretty much look like us, and they're experiencing nothing but good in their lives too. And we imagine that when they get older and go to college, they'll just repeat the whole process. Are you like me? I kind of want to throw up. a little bit when I hear that story, because I'm thinking that's nowhere near what I've known. That is nowhere near what I've known. In life, there's a lot of challenges. Real lives are filled with painful moments, surprising plot twists. That is real life. And so I want you to know, in your story, it's not over yet. And don't be surprised if there are not some plot twists just around the corner. And don't be surprised if some of those plot twists are actually difficulties that could cause you some pain. You're going to be okay. You're going to get through it. Third thing I want to say is this. In your story, you are uniquely equipped to be able to handle the painful parts. They're tough. Nobody wants them. But you're going to be able to handle the painful parts. You're watching, and that lets me know that you're able to survive. At least this long, you've survived. I would imagine you have had several painful experiences in your life, but somehow you have been able to navigate through, and you are to this point. Your story, believe it or not, gets interesting when you go through a hardship and you have to overcome it. And so that's a part of each story. Maybe you have been rejected in your life. Maybe that's your story. And you know what? It was tough. That rejection was tough. Maybe it was even rejection from the church. That had to be tough. But you've overcome that. Or you're overcoming that. And that's an amazing thing. So many people I've seen along life's journey, a difficulty arises. Their parent passes away and they say, I quit. I'm quitting on life. I don't want to do life anymore. Or they get screwed in a business deal and they say, I'm out. I'm no more interested in living. Or a loved one walks out on them and they say, I'm out. It's over. Or a well thought out plan that they've worked on and worked on and worked on gets hijacked because of something as arbitrary as a pandemic. And they say, no. This misfortune has broken my will and my back, and I don't want to live anymore. But others go through the same thing, and they're able to say, maybe I'm not good at this, but I'm going to keep walking because I just believe somehow I'm going to get on the other side, and I'm going to look back, and I'm going to see that I made it through, Everything of value I've ever learned in my life has come when I have gone through a painful time. And I've learned some things about me. I've learned some things about God. I've learned things about the universe. I've learned things about people. And I look back and I say, in that painful time, I grew. I became a stronger human being. And I didn't like it. I didn't like the painful time. It was horrible. But it helped me. One of my favorite verses is Jesus saying in John 14:27, peace I leave with you. My peace I give unto you. Not as the world gives, give I unto you. So let not your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid. What's he saying? He's saying there is a type of peace that the world offers that's an absence of problems, but that's not real. I can give you peace that is an internal peace that even in the midst of problems allows you to say, I'm going to make it through. I don't know how, but I'm going to make it through. Well, one final thing, because honestly, your story is incredibly important. And if you could think about your life as it relates to a beautiful story, then this will be helpful. Here's the final thing I want to say. Your story will turn out differently than you would have guessed as a younger person, but it still can be a great, great story. I had this idea when I was a young guy of how my life was going to turn out. And it hasn't turned out like that. The dreams I had as a young man, those aren't things that I accomplished or fulfilled. But you know what? I wouldn't trade the life now for the life I thought I wanted then. All things being the same, I could have what I dreamed at its apex, what I dreamed of when I was a young 24-year-old person. I could have that, or I could have where I am right now. It is dramatically different, but I would take where I am now because God has allowed a more beautiful story to happen. When Donald Miller used to talk about living your story, he said these were the things that were important for a good story. He said you need to have a protagonist with a good ambition. By that he meant a lead character. And I just want you to know you have to be the lead character in your story. Now you might be a junior executive and you might think, well, my attention is on that CEO that's on my supervisor, or that's maybe my life. Listen, it's your story. You work with that person, that's important, but it's your story. The decisions you make are for your story. So you have to have a protagonist with a good ambition, and that is you. That is me. The second thing you have to have is conflict. It would be a boring story without conflict. So it's just a part of it. Realize it. Don't freak out. Conflict will always be in your life. You'll never outgrow it. You'll never get so good with things that you don't have any conflict. That's impossible. Third thing you're going to have is you're going to have as a protagonist, the ability to overcome the difficulties that you have to face. Whatever happens in a good story, the protagonist, he may get knocked down, but he wants to figure out, how do I learn and grow and do better and get through whatever the circumstance is. And then finally, and it's important, the protagonist in the story usually experiences ultimate victory, but it turns out that it's a different kind of victory than he initially or she initially thought. Those are the important ingredients in a story. And they're important in your life, and they're important in my life. It will turn out different, but it can be so beautiful. Some of you had dreams, and those dreams have gone by the wayside. Doesn't matter. You still can have a beautiful life. Wherever you are, hear me. I have seen it for 40 years. I have seen people who have experienced beautiful lives even after their original dreams have been dashed. Let me close with a movie that came out in 2004, and it's just one of those movies that is very captivating, and I remember it well. It was called Friday Night Lights. They even made a television show, and I never saw the TV show, but I remember the movie was really good, and the movie was based on a true story. It was about the Permian High School Panthers from Odessa, Texas. And this was set in 1988, and it had a great cast. Billy Bob Thornton played the head coach of the football team. One of the dads of one of the players on the team was Tim McGraw, and he did a great job, the country singer. And the town is obsessed with their high school football team. The Odessa high school football team, they eat it, breathe it, sleep it, it's everything. And this particular year, they have great hopes because they have this running back that's going to go Division I and probably to the NFL. But in the very first game, the running back goes down with a devastating injury, and he's out for the rest of the year. What is this team going to do? And even if you're not a sports nut, I think you would like the movie because the coach is having to hold the town together because the town is freaking out, as you can imagine, in a West Texas town that's obsessed with their high school football team. They've got a new coach. They've got a player that's down that they were depending on. So the coach is having to keep the parents settled. He's having to take the team and having to fire them up and let them know that they still can have a great year. And he's having to navigate all these things. It's incredible to watch and to know that it really happened. And then they end up playing for the state championship, and they played for the state championship against Dallas Carter High from Dallas, Texas. This team looked like NFL. When you see the film, it looked like the NFL against this Odessa team, and you think, oh my gosh, they're going to get killed, but they don't get killed. In fact, the game goes back and forth, and then with the last play of the game, Odessa has a chance to score a touchdown and win the game. So you just know what's going to happen, right? We've seen this before. Odessa, the quarterback goes back and he scrambles to the right and he's chased, and he reverses his field and he scrambles to the left and he's chased, and you think, oh my gosh, this is so nerve-wracking, but I know he's going to throw the ball or he's going to be able to escape somehow, and he ends up trying to run it and he gets tackled, and you wonder, did he cross the line? And the referee said, nope, he didn't make it. And you think, what? What? How did that happen? I can't believe that. But he didn't make it. So I watched that movie and I thought, that's a great movie, but I hated they didn't win. And I went home and I later read about the team and found out that the next year they did win the state championship. So I was watching an interview with the director, the producer, the writers, and someone asked them, why didn't you do a movie about the next year when they won the championship? Why did you do it about this year when they came up just this close but didn't make it? And the writer of the movie said it was because that year the story was better. They had to overcome more obstacles. They had more things working against them, and just with just having to push through some really tough stuff, that was the better story than the story the next year when they just sailed through and won the championship. I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you're listening to my voice, your story maybe will not be the championship story you dreamed, but you're overcoming things. You are being courageous when you can be courageous. You are growing. You are learning. You're not the person you used to be. You're taking steps to become fully who you've discovered you are. And your story, even if you're not ringing the bell that you thought you were going to ring one day, your story is still beautiful. And that's one of the great things I think about the Village Church and Everybody Church, is all of us, all over the country, even some people all over the world, we're opening our hearts up to what does it mean to live a more beautiful, more loving, more inclusive, more aware of who we are, more considerate and kind story than we had ever lived before. And your story can be a beautiful story. I want to also encourage you. Thank you for watching the Village Church, and thank you for being a part of our online community. But I also want to encourage you to watch Everybody Church. It rolls out Sunday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and Stan Mitchell is teaching, and he's doing some of the greatest teaching I have ever heard. And Jane and I, on Sunday nights, before we do anything, we sit down at 7 o'clock and we watch that service, because it's 30 minutes of deep, wonderful, inspiring, mind-stretching, soul-building teaching. And that's Stan Mitchell, and that's on Everybody Church. So I hope you'll do that. Again, thank you for being a part of what we are doing here at the Village Church. We love you. We can't wait to be with you again next week, and we are praying for you. Let us know if you need anything and you think we could help. You let us know, okay? Ray@raywaters.com. Blessings to you.